Hey guys, Eric Cooner here with your daily dose of hope. I reminded when I was in the 6th grade and had this situation that took place. We were down on the basketball court and we were down there shooting some ball, and I was with my older brother, and there was this older kid that came up and began to basically talk some smack, began to pick on me. And as I looked over, I had my older brother there, much older brother, who I thought at the time had my back. And he was kind of letting me step into the fire, so to say, and defend for myself. But I didn't know that at the time. And so I began to talk a little smack back, thinking my brother would jump in. I'm in the 6th grade, this kid's in the 8th grade. And the next thing I know, I'm getting kicked in the face, beat down on the ground. My brother's not jumping in to help me. Yes, it's an embarrassing story that I thought was going to turn out the opposite, but it didn't. Reminds me of the story in Daniel chapter 3, where somebody did have the back of those that were basically kind of talking a little bit of smack to King Nebuchadnezzar. You may know the story well. King Nebuchadnezzar was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They're at a place where they're standing their ground. They're willing to say, you know what, I'm not going to bow down to the enemy. I'm not going to bow down to a golden image. And Nebuchadnezzar here in a portion of chapter 3, around verse 16, says to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they replied to King Nebuchadnezzar, "We do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up." I love the fact that the boldness that they and the steps they took to say, you know, we're not going to bow down. They realized that God had their back at that time. I thought my brother had my back. He let me step into the fire. And guess what? Through all this situation, through all this time, as Nebuchadnezzar's threatening them with being thrown into the furnace, what happens? They're thrown into the furnace. But they knew, regardless of what was going to take place, that God had them. God had their back in that situation. And we jump down to verse 24. It says, "Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet." This is after he's done thrown them into the fire. He's done stoked the furnace 7 times hotter than it had ever been. It was hot enough that as even the guards brought the 3 Hebrew children to the fire, as he brought those Jews to the fire, guess what? It killed the guards. It was so hot. But here they step into the fire. They're put into the fire. In verse 24 it says, "King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, 'Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?' They replied, 'Certainly, O king.' He said, 'Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like the Son of God's.'" Some debate whether it was an angel or whether some debate it was Jesus. I know at that point God rescued those 3 young men, that God was in the midst of that fire, whether it was in the form of Jesus himself or it was the form of an angel. I believe, and I like to think that it was Jesus that stepped into the fire, that was there with them, protecting them, that had his back, that he's always the 4th man in the fire. He's always the one that's going to lead us through. They come out unharmed, unsinged, not a smell of smoke whatsoever upon their body, upon their clothes. Nothing, no harm had been done to them whatsoever. And through the astonishment of that, King Nebuchadnezzar recognized that God was real, that their God was a mighty God, a God that could save, that God that could deliver. And it's amazing to know that in our lives, when we go through situations, God has got our back. God is there in the fight for us. God is not going to allow somebody to come in and beat the living daylights out of us like it happened to me. So I'm reminded so much of God's love. When we get to look at his goodness, we get to read of his stories and his greatness and what he's done. Depend upon him today. Depend upon him that he's going to lead you through the fire. He's going to lead you through the situations. He's got your back. He's going to protect you. God bless you.